I'm Aaron Hickman,
I'm Spencer Schultz.
And I'm Logan Shanks.
and you're tuned in to Cyclone InCyders. Starting off with volleyball, they won both matches against Oklahoma last weekend without Eleanor Holthouse and Maria Popovich, who were once again out due to Big 12 health and safety protocols. Logan, they're third in the Big 12 behind Texas and Baylor, and only 2 games separate third from eighth in the conference. How important are the next 2 weeks going to be?
Well, for a lack of a better word, very important. Both West Virginia and Kansas State are both on 3-game winning streaks. So I think if we can really stop those from, going to 4, obviously, I think if we just play like we have been the past couple of days, or the past couple of games, then we should be able to, get our spot back up in the rankings for the Big 12.
Yeah, the next 2 weeks are really important, really just for seeding purposes for the postseason, and kind of where they end up in the Big 12. And like Logan said, a few tough matchups, so it'll be good for them.
Yeah, the Big 12 has really been living up to expectations this year for volleyball. There's been no weeks off. The only team that's really having a below average year is TCU, but everyone else has been really tough. So, yeah, the way that Iowa State has been able to hang in there and be third in the conference behind Texas and Baylor has honestly been really impressive, especially when you consider the players they've been missing. But with Holthouse out, Mariah Mitchell, who is from Iowa and transferred here this year, has really stepped up the past few matches playing in that outside hitter spot. Spencer, what are your thoughts on Mariah Mitchell's performance the past couple weeks?
It's just kind of been the theme of the team throughout the year. Injuries throughout the team, COVID, protocol stuff. Just women or girls stepping up behind starters, and making the most of their opportunities when they come up. And without Holthouse, their play really didn't drop off that much. So that was significant for Iowa State.
Yeah, and I really just think looking at the stats, most recently against both matches against Oklahoma, she's had 12 kills. And, she's a senior, so she knows what it's like to play in the NCAA level. So I really just hope in the next few matches that are very important to Iowa State, she can at the very least keep up what she's been producing, and if not, just get better and help out the team even more.
Yeah, everyone on the team just preaches being ready when your number is called, because especially at the NCAA level and still when there's some uncertainty with COVID, even though things are a lot better this year, you never really know when you're going to get a shot. And Mariah Mitchell has been a great example of someone who got their shot and ran with it and didn't look back. Just been really impressive from her the past couple of weeks. So, Logan, what do you think the team will need to do to win both of these matches against Kansas State, both at home before they end the season against a tough opponent in Baylor?
So just looking back at Kansas State, they are on a 3-game winning streak against TCU and Texas Tech, which are teams that we've gone 3-1 against. And I really just think Cyclones are going to have to start off strong. Really, the entire narrative has been, if we don't start off strong, kind of get that 1, maybe even 2-set lead, we kind of fall behind, and we just really aren't able to battle back from behind. And so I think to win these next few, we're just going to have to start off strong.
We talked about the serving issues a few weeks ago. I think it just need to continue to improve on that. Other than that, in matches like these against good teams, it's kind of been the case throughout the whole season with how good the Big 12's been, but they just need to stay disciplined and avoid those mental mistakes against a good team like they're facing.
Yeah, the team, they've really played great defense all year, but there were some stretches during the season where the offense hasn't been where they want it to be. But against Oklahoma, especially, the offense was really good, and they were able to do that without Eleanor Holthouse, who is their best player when it comes to offensive production. So I think that's a really encouraging sign for the rest of the season, and they just need to keep that offense clicking, because with how good their defense is, when their offense is clicking, Iowa State is a really tough team to beat. But once again, they're facing off against Kansas State this week. very important matches when it comes to the Big 12 postseason picture and ultimately the NCAA tournament picture. So Iowa State really needs to steal some of these matches, maybe steal at least one from Baylor, and they'll be looking pretty good when the season's over. But moving on to women's basketball, they won their first game of the season 65-38 over Omaha. The only player that really shot well was Lexi Donarski. She had 18 points on 6 threes. Spencer, what was your thoughts on the sophomore's performance?
Not really surprised. She kind of set the tone for the expectations for her season. Just continuing to blossom into the star that she has the potential to become. And with Jones injured, it was huge that she stepped up, even though they were facing kind of a lesser opponent.
Yeah, and I really think that, most of those points and threes came out in the second half. So if we're able to see this type of play from her as a whole throughout the game, that she's going to be a really big threat in the NCAA. And I think she really summed it up best when she said that her teammates were just helping her get uncontested shots, and she was able to easily hit those threes. So overall, a very impressive performance. And I think if we're able to see this even more from her, then this is going to be a very big team in the NCAA as a whole.
Yeah, I think, the fact that Donarski started out pretty cold and was missing some of those open threes, and then in the second half, she was able to get herself back up to 50% shooting, says a lot about her. And I think the rest of the team is going to come along eventually. I think they have a lot of players on the team, especially Ashley Jones, who, if she stays healthy, is obviously really dangerous. And Coach Fennelly said that, he's just going to encourage them to keep shooting because he believes in the weapons that they have. And I think that's the right approach. But moving on to Ashley Jones' performance, Spencer, you kind of touched on it. She had 15 points and 8 rebounds on 4 of 16 shooting. She was 3 of 9 for 3. She suffered an ankle injury less than a minute into the exhibition match against Wisconsin River Falls last week and had to really rehab it so that she could play in this game. Logan, does her ankle injury concern you at all moving forward?
I'm honestly not too concerned. She did say post game, that it wasn't really bothering her, that she felt fine. And as much as I would really like to take the athlete's word for that, that's obviously something we hear a lot, and that, it's just not something to worry about. They can power through it. But that being said, I also just want to think that this is a first game shooting slump, just kind of getting back into the regular season form, and that she'll just get used to it as she has throughout the season.
Yeah, I'm with Logan. If her struggles continue, I think it's probably obvious the injury is still holding her back. With that being said, I think you just want to make sure that that ankle is fully healed by Big 12 play. If that means sitting her out a few non-conference games, then so be it. But I just think more than anything, you want to make sure she's fully healthy by then.
Yeah, I think Ashley Jones is definitely someone who, if she feels like she can play, she's going to. And if they think the injury is bad enough, the coaching staff is honestly going to have to step in and tell her, like, you need to take a few games off, because she just has that personality that if she can be out there and help the team, she's going to. And I mean, the shooting wasn't that great, but she still had 15 points and 8 rebounds. And she played some really solid defense that whole game. So it says a lot about her that we don't really know how much her ankle was hurting, but she was still a very impactful player. But moving on to kind of another issue that the team, not really an issue, but something to watch for the team. Post play is going to have a lot of moving parts this season. Morgan Kane started the game against Omaha, but Izzy Zingaro started the second half. What should the approach be for Monday against South Dakota State when it comes to the post play? Spencer.
Honestly, I think the way Fennelly's doing it, or did it in the opening game, is just fine for now. Kind of having that rotating door, just kind of, and also figuring out your rotations. It's an early in the season kind of thing. But kind of, I guess, a month or two in the season, you want to start to figure out who your best option is, who's better coming off the bench and stuff like that. So for now, I think the revolving door in the post is fine.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Spencer. I do, however, think that Kane's probably going to get some more minutes on Monday. But overall, I really liked both their performances rebound-wise. And I think that was just kind of testing out the waters. Obviously, we weren't too worried about that game towards the end of the second half. So, yeah, overall, I just think that rotation went well, and this might be something that we see throughout the season, and maybe Kane starts working back in, or we see Z kind of take that role over.
Yeah, Morgan Kane only played, I think it was like 9 minutes in that one. And that's not something that I think is going to keep up. She's going to definitely get more minutes than that. But when you're playing an opponent like Omaha, you want to get a look at what you have. And Izzy Zingaro had 7 points, 7 rebounds. She's 6'4", so she's going to get, I mean, regardless, she's going to get playing time this year because of her size. And I also think Naimir Dew is going to be someone to watch. She's more of like an athletic stretch four, but she had some pretty good minutes off the bench as well. So I think Iowa State is going to be fine with that rotation. And then once Beatrice Jordan comes back from the ankle injury that's been bothering her, they're going to have another option. And she's a senior with a lot of experience. So I think as the season moves on, we'll get kind of a clearer picture. But for now, I was happy with what I saw against Omaha. Emily Ryan, she had a huge game. She only shot 3 of 10 from the floor, but she tied the school record with 9 steals. Logan, what were your thoughts on her and also just overall Iowa State's defense playing well when the offense was cold?
I think that in the first half, the defense was really what was able to keep our offense, make up for our lack of offense in the first half. And most of those steals came off of lazy turnovers on Omaha's end. So, this obviously isn't going to be something that we see every game from Emily Ryan, but it overall just helped us defense to just keep ourselves in the game. And I think without those, we wouldn't have been able to score as many points as we ultimately did. And overall, I think defense wise, we also just held them to 10 3-point attempts. So when you hold a team to just 10 attempts outside, that really helps you just kind of get that better mental edge against them.
It was encouraging for sure, the defense performance, but I guess we kind of have to consider the opponent they were facing, obviously. So I guess we'll see once they face some tougher competition. But having good defense on this team will be important. We know the offensive talent they have, but when the offense is having off nights, if Iowa State proves to have a good defense, it'll be nice to be able to lean on that when the offense isn't quite there.
Yeah, I think I agree. It's going to need to see it over some more games against some better opponents to really know just how good the defense is and just how good the offense is. Because there's not going to be many nights, especially in the Big 12, where you can attempt 39 threes and only shoot 26% from beyond the arc and come out with a win. But it is encouraging just the amount of effort they put in on the defensive end when the offense wasn't going their way, because there's plenty of players all around the NCAA in men's and women's basketball that don't put in the right amount of effort on the other end of the floor when things aren't going well offensively. But all that really matters is that they are 1-0. They'll be back in action Monday against South Dakota State. Better opponent than Omaha, so I think it's going to be a pretty good test. And hopefully, with almost a week to get healthy, Ashley Jones will be looking pretty solid in that one. But moving on to men's basketball, they had an opening night win over Kennesaw State, 84-73. There were 69 free throws in that game and 57 fouls. Logan, does Iowa State need to clean things up? Or I'm sorry, Spencer, does Iowa State need to clean things up, or were the officials just whistle happy?
I think with that many fouls, I think the rest were certainly whistle happy, especially with the amount of fouls on both ends. It's not like it was kind of skewed. I mean, kind of what we talked about with women's basketball, you're only one game in. So if those high foul numbers last a few games, then there's room for concern. But for now, I just see it as the refs kind of being whistle happy.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Spencer. I feel like one of the things that stuck out to me personally was both teams, I feel like, got a free screen call that one of them set a screen too hard. And I think that was just one of them making up for the other. But ultimately a little bit of both, I think a little bit of whistle happy from the refs, and, Cyclones were playing a little hard, but both teams kind of got playing hard towards the end of the game. But I don't think we have a lot of guys on this team that have played together a lot. And I just think as the year goes on, we're going to kind of get that team chemistry and kind of get things together.
Yeah, I thought it was funny that Otzelberger said in the post-game press conference that he hoped they didn't set basketball back too much with that game because the amount of fouls and the amount of free throws was just ridiculous. But I do think the officials were whistle happy, but also Iowa State was taking a lot of unnecessary risks, especially for a team that should not be going too crazy with the risks this year. I feel like they need to find a system and stick to it if they're going to win more games than last year. So, but I mean, like you said, Spencer, I think I'm going to need to see this become a trend before I get too worried about it. But for now, this is just a team that really needs to do some gelling, and luckily, there's some very winnable non-conference games that will hopefully get them ready for Big 12 play. But Tyrese Hunter, honestly, the player I think everyone is most excited to see play this season, didn't play that many minutes due to 4 fouls, but he still finished with 11 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. Very likely could have had a triple-double if he wasn't in foul trouble. Logan, what were your thoughts on the freshman, and are you confident in him moving forward?
I'm very confident in him. After the game, he addressed the fouls, and he really kind of like what you said, Aaron. I feel like he could have played even more minutes without the fouls in the first half. And that's just something that a freshman player is going to have to learn, is kind of adjusting to the NCAA level and the Big 12. And ultimately, he'll just be able to play more minutes as he learns what it's like to play college basketball.
Yeah, I'm definitely fully confident in him. I think he'll become, the next great Iowa State point guard following, Kane, Morris, and Halliburton. But I was just impressed with he's just so smooth, and I was impressed with him as a distributor as well, being able to rack up that many assists in those 20 minutes.
Yeah, regardless of the opponent, not very many freshmen stuff the stat sheet like that in their very first game. And the fact that he did it in only 20 minutes makes me feel really good about him. I think other than the fouls, he looked pretty comfortable out there. And I'm honestly just really excited to see what he does this year because from what I saw, I mean, I don't want to make any early predictions, but from what I saw, he has a very high Big 12 Freshman of the Year potential. And I think Iowa State needs a player like that. And especially if he ends up staying for at least 3 years, even 4 years, Iowa State could really use a player like that. Kind of like the players they used to have with the success under Hoiberg in the first couple of years with Prohm. But this is just kind of a broad question, but I want to give you guys the opportunity to talk about any other player that stuck out to you. Spencer, I'll let you go ahead first.
I was really impressed with Isaiah Brockington. We've obviously heard a lot about Hunter. Brockington came in, got 18 and 6. I think that 6 part is what's most important. They're going to need their guards to rebound really well this year with how small our bigs are. And he was able to create a shot really well.
Yeah, and 2 players that really stuck out to me were Caleb Grill and Trey Jackson. Caleb Grill obviously coming back from UNLV, and I think it was great kind of seeing his movement off the ball and helping not only himself create shots, but also his teammates. And then Trey Jackson overall throughout the game, I really hate it when college teams do this, but they were playing full court press at some point and just guarding him the whole time as he brought the ball up the court. And I know it's kind of a silly compliment, but I think he did a really good job of making sure that he wasn't giving easy turnovers while he was bringing the ball up the court when they were playing pretty good defense.
Yeah, I agree with all the players that you guys said, so I'll go with a different one. I actually really liked what I saw from George Condit. Coming off the bench, he's a player he's the longest tenured player on the team now. And I think we all would agree, and he would even agree, that he hasn't really lived up to the potential that a lot of people saw for him. But he looked like a player when he came off the bench that he understood his role and he played it well. And he could very easily consider himself to just be a shoe-in starter, considering the experience he has at Iowa State. But the fact that he accepted that bench role and played pretty well off the bench, I think, is really encouraging for both him and the culture that Otzelberger is putting in place. So I'm going to go with George Condit for a player that stuck out to me. Next topic, the team shot over 52% from the floor, and we did not see very much of that last season. Spencer, what were your initial thoughts on the shot decision-making and just the overall offensive flow from Iowa State?
Obviously encouraging. I think it's obviously a step up from Prohm system, just in the first glimpse with Otzelberger there. Obviously, won't put too much into it, just being the first game. But I will say, with facing Oregon State Friday night in a legit Pac-12 Power 5 opponent, if they can shoot well, then I think that'll certainly get fans, excited for the season. Maybe not March Madness, but just be more excited for the season than last.
Yeah, and I think, very few teams, it seems like, they didn't really, we kind of created the shot better on this game. It seemed like a lot of games last year, we were dragging the clock down to 5 seconds left with the shot clock, and whoever had the ball was just shooting it up. So I think really we went into every possession with a better offensive mindset.
Yeah, I think there were several possessions where it looked like they actually had a plan on offense. Wasn't just ISO ball and chucking up a shot. And like you said, Spencer, I'm not going to really, with all these things, I'm not going to put too much stock into the first game. But I think it is okay as an Iowa State fan to be encouraged from things that you saw in this game, because I genuinely do believe this season is going to be better than last season. And the fact that the offense looked the way it did the other day, I liked a lot of what I saw. And I'm hoping that, even if they don't get a win against Oregon State, it's just going to actually be a watchable game, because what I'm looking forward to from Iowa State this year is actually having watchable games, even in losses, instead of like 20, 25-point losses all the time. But like we've said, they face Oregon State Friday night. What do you guys just want to see overall from the team? I know I just listed off a few things, but Logan, what are some things you're hoping to see against a legit Power 5 opponent?
So I think really what I'm looking for is, obviously it's going to be a harder opponent or a harder team to go up against. So I just want to see improved things such as like less fouls and just improving on stuff that we were able to show in the first game, which was, creating our own shots and not having to rely on a lucky 3-pointer at the end or just lazy defense towards the end of possessions.
I would say defensive intensity. I think Otzelberg kind of harped on getting a few guys who can play really good defense in the offseason. But obviously, I think we can all agree this team won't be like dynamite on offense once again. So with that, playing good defense is how they'll be able to stay in games all season. And it kind of starts with this game.
Yeah, I think if Iowa State has a good performance against Oregon State, I'll feel really encouraged about how the rest of the season is going to go. And like I said, I don't expect that much more of the season, but I definitely do expect more than 2 wins. And hopefully some of the glimpses of the future of what we can expect to see, in future seasons can be seen on Friday, especially with a player like Tyrese Hunter leading the show. But that'll be 7:00 Friday night against Oregon State at Hilton. Moving on to football, big win against Texas, horns down, baby. My first question, Spencer, how were you feeling when we went down 7-3? Were you confident, or were you kind of like, this is not going the way I was hoping it would?
Obviously there's a little bit of, here we go again. But one, we were at Jack Trice, so I still had confidence. More so I was just kind of frustrated with the offense and all the blown opportunities, especially with how well the defense was playing. I felt the offense just didn't capitalize on the field position that they were able to get from the defense. But obviously they made up for it in the second half.
Yeah, and I gotta agree. I was very nervous going into half, kind of same as Spencer. As here we go again. We're just gonna have a couple good games, and then we just shit the bed against. Oh, whoopsie. We don't do well against Texas, and I thought if this is how the whole game was gonna go, that we weren't really gonna be able to do as well as we were. But I think I envisioned Campbell having a great halftime speech.
I'm leaving that in, by the way. It's funny. So I was actually kind of the opposite of you guys, because I don't know if both of you guys were at the game. I was at the game.
Yeah, I was.
I was at the game.
Okay, yeah. When Texas ran out on the field or not like Texas themselves, but like the cheerleaders and everything, they ran out on the field with the Texas flag. Cheerleaders came out on the field doing cheers, and no other team really does that at Jack Trice, but Texas is Texas. They think they're like the greatest show on turf, even though they're on a 4-game losing streak. but they still had to be cocky and run out on the field with the flag and everything. And when they did that, I looked over at the Iowa State sideline and just saw how they reacted. And at that moment, I don't know why, because we were losing 7-3, but I was like, I think like we're gonna win this game. Like I think this game is actually over. And kind of just going off of that, 27-0 in the second half ended up being a 30-7 win. Started out with a huge Brees Hall run and then a trick play from Xavier Hutchinson to Tariq Milton. Logan, how encouraging was it to see the offense ball out and the defense go back into lockdown mode after a really disappointing performance against West Virginia?
So for a lack of better words, after the trick play to X, or from X to Milton, I turned to my friend and I said, Campbell must have had a heck of a halftime speech, because coming out at half, we just had a totally different offense than we did in the first 2 quarters. Like you said, the huge run from Brees Hall and trick play, obviously, from Milton to X. And I just think, without those, we don't really set the tone as well as we did for the rest of the game. And I honestly think Texas just got scared and they saw how well we were doing. And I don't know if you guys have seen this, but it's been floating around social media, the D lineman coach from Texas blowing up at his players. From an Iowa State fan's perspective, I thought that was hilarious, but that's what I think.
I thought you were going to go down the pole monkey or the
Pole assassin.
pole assassin road, but yeah, I did see that video and I love it. Obviously, with Texas heading up to the SEC, because they'll do bigger and better things there. I just loved seeing us stick it to them in what will probably be the last game in Ames, and not let it be a close game late. Especially, we stomped them. Yeah, I took off at halftime and beat traffic. So, if I don't attend the last 3 games, that means we should probably win all 3.
Yeah, so I was really encouraged by the offense, first of all, especially whipping that trick play out of the bag and executing it. I think it was kind of funny too that Campbell said they ran that play in practice and Xavier Hutchinson messed it up like every single time, but he can't do in the actual game, so that's clutch.
Yeah, they said he overthrew him Milton by 20 yards in practice.
Yeah, and Purdy said the throw was accurate. The technique was a little off. His throw definitely did look a little funny, but it worked, so whatever. But back to that video of the D-line coach. I think that's honestly one of the problems Texas has, is the fact that that video even leaked in the first place. Because, like, I've played sports, and I've been, like, on a bus ride home after a really disappointing loss, and I've had my ass chewed before. And I never thought, like, I need to record this and like put this out there, you know what I mean? So I think that's a big problem with Texas's culture. Brees Hall has said it, 5-star culture is better than 5-star players, and Texas brings in all these players and it doesn't seem to do much for them. And I think the fact that someone posted that video of the D-line coach chewing him out really says a lot about the culture they have right now.
You think he was mad in that video? I can only imagine when they all got together after that video leaked.
There were laps and laps and laps at practice. But moving on to the next topic, is the Brees Hall versus Bijan Robinson debate over after that game, Spencer?
Unbiasedly, no. I've honestly, Bijan is still just as good in my opinion. They're neck and neck. And he still had a good game. 18 for 90. Also had 8 catches. Only 30-some yards. But obviously, late in the game, also he didn't get as many touches just because kind of the game didn't dictate that with how down they got. So and then, I think you can make a case for either one, but I think it's still a good debate.
Yeah, and I heard Brees Hall, he was saying that they hit each other up on Instagram after every game, just kind of words of encouragement whenever they have a good game or anything like that. And I just think it's kind of like comparing apples to oranges. Brees is more of that, kind of hate to compare him to this, but Derrick Henry, he's gonna break more tackles than Bijan and, more stiff arms, whatever. And Bijan is more that shiftier, quicker. We kind of saw that in the game. He was able to make quicker moves, but Brees is ultimately just better downfield making moves.
Yeah, I feel like a big part of this debate is just the passion people have for Iowa State against Texas. Like Iowa State fans really want the Iowa State guy to be better than the Texas guy, and Texas fans really want the Texas guy to be better than the Iowa State guy. But I think when you just look at it from a neutral perspective, they're two great players, two of the best running backs in the country. And I mean, the fact that there even is debate, I think it's good for the Big 12. And I think it's just good to have that conversation because it does brings even more attention to Brees Hall, and especially against a big brand like Texas. But yeah, I don't think that debate is over. And like you said, Logan, I think they are very different kinds of players, both really talented, and they both showed kind of the different things they bring to the game in that Iowa State Texas game. But Texas is now on a 4-game losing streak. We've beat them 3 years in a row. Spencer, how satisfying was this win? And do you think it was a send-off, or are Texas and Oklahoma going to be stuck in the Big 12 next year?
I think both of them will still be in the Big 12 one more year next year, which means OU will obviously get one more trip to Ames. But I think that was Texas's last game in Ames, as I said before. So with that, I think, certainly a proper send-off for them from Ames.
And I think like this season, Oklahoma has proven themselves that, I personally would like to see Oklahoma in the SEC, not so that we don't go up against them every year, but just so that I could see what they were like against SEC talent every single game. But with Texas, I still have my doubts because like we've seen this year and even a little bit last year, it kind of seemed like it was a little bit of rebuilding year. And I don't want to base this all off the quarterback. Sam Ellinger, kind of towards the end wasn't as great as he was the previous years. But honestly, I just don't know what Texas has to offer in the SEC that they don't already have.
Yeah, I think it's just very obviously a money grab by both Texas and the SEC because even though Texas has not been playing to what they should be, especially with their budget and their recruiting, they are a big brand, and there's tons of people in Texas that are just absolutely die hard and are going to spend a lot of money on, going to games and merch and everything. And especially like the Texas and Texas A&M game is going to be back, and I think that's actually going to be a really big deal. But
really,
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Really quick. I was at Coach's Corner on I think Monday. Yeah, Monday. They have it once a week, with the coaches. And I was there, so I got to meet Campbell and Pollard. And Pollard was there, and he talked about he's never on the field for Sweet Caroline after we win. He's always heading to the locker room, to talk with players. And he talked about after the Texas game, he said I wasn't going to miss the opportunity to go to half field, midfield, and shake the hands of the Texas AD for obvious reasons.
Yeah, so what I really enjoyed about that game was the fact that after Sweet Caroline, they shot off a bunch of fireworks at Jack Trice Stadium. And if you've ever been to Jack Trice Stadium, they do not shoot fireworks off after games. And I think that was like the nail in the coffin, final middle finger to Texas. And I really enjoyed that. So yeah, I think I agree with you, Spencer. I don't think Texas is going to be playing in Ames again. I think that was the proper send-off, and I hope we can give the same kind of send-off to Oklahoma next year. But moving on, they face Texas Tech this week before Oklahoma Tech next week. We have not lost to Texas Tech in a minute, and it has not really been close either. But still, do you think this is going to be another trap game similar to West Virginia? And what needs to go better this time around? Whoever's turn it is. I have no idea. I don't remember. Logan.
I think ultimately, like, we can't underestimate them like we did West Virginia. I think that's something we kind of caught ourselves with is maybe not the football team didn't, but I certainly did. I underestimated how, I'll even say it, above average West Virginia was. So, Texas Tech has had a couple good games spread throughout their schedule. And I just think we've got to go into this like we're playing to go to the Big 12 championship, which is what we're doing ultimately.
Yeah, certainly another trap game with it being on the road before facing a better opponent. Defense needs to play well, and the offense should do enough to get the W, in my opinion. But I'll still be nervous. Obviously, don't want it to be a loss. But the big difference between this and West Virginia is Mike Rose will be playing.
Yeah, I think Mike Rose honestly makes all the difference. If Mike Rose played, it kind of sucks that one player made that big of a difference for Iowa State's defense. But I think if Mike Rose plays in that West Virginia game, it goes a lot differently. And it really did bother me that the very next week, Oklahoma State's defense only gave up 3 points to West Virginia. And so that really made Iowa State's performance all the more pathetic. But I do think they're going to beat Texas Tech. I'm going to be kind of on the edge of my seat until I would say they have like a 2-touchdown lead. I don't see Iowa State blowing a 14-point lead to Texas Tech. But as long as it's under like 2 touchdowns, I'm going to feel a little bit worried, and just hopefully the defense will show up and the offense will keep doing its thing. And I do think they will, because the fact that Baylor lost last week and the situation is looking a little more favorable now for the Big 12 championship, I think they're going to do what they need to do and set up a big game against Oklahoma. That is going to be on the big Fox noon game with Gus Johnson calling the game. So I'm looking forward to that. We'll take a quick break and then we'll be back. We're just going to end the show with some random rapid fire topics. You're tuning into Cyclone InCyders. Be right back. All right, we're back here on Cyclone InCyders. Usually at this time we do a new game. We came up with 3-word summaries, but due to the nature of one of the topics, I think it's more appropriate just to talk about them. So we've just got some random topics that we're going to discuss. First one, the unfortunate situation that occurred with former Las Vegas Raiders receiver Henry Ruggs. He was going 156 miles per hour in a 40, I believe it was. Maybe it was a 45. And
I think it might be even less. Yeah.
Yeah, and he ran into a girl from behind. I'm not going to get into all like the gruesome details, but her and her dog passed away. And it's just a really unfortunate situation where I guarantee, I mean, he's an NFL player. He could get an Uber, or one of his teammates would have gladly given him a ride, I'm sure. But Logan, I'll let you start off just with your overall thoughts on the situation.
So for me personally, when I first got the notification, it was very vague. It was one of those that was first reported by TMZ. So there wasn't really a lot of factual information that I trusted. But for me personally, it just seemed like everything that came out, it just got worse. First, it was he was in a car crash. Then it was a DUI accident. Then it was he killed someone in the accident. And then it came out how fast he was going. So personally, I think as sad as this is, it's a reminder for everyone that you can't just go out and do that. And this is something that, people should take very seriously. And I don't mean to, claim that I'm a scientist or a mathematician on this, but, look, he had a BAC of 0.161, and, doing a weight to alcohol conversion chart, that means he had anywhere from 7 to 9 drinks, and he still thought it was a good idea to get into a car. And obviously at that point it's not. And I don't want to say too much, but I just think it's terrible what happened. And my thoughts and prayers go out to the families of the victims in this situation.
Yeah. Obviously, just first of all, drinking and driving, still a big issue. Just overall, the whole thing is horrible. I think Ruggs just deserves to sit in prison for a long, long time. I saw 50+ years, and I think that's certainly deservable. I also didn't think it was very appropriate for people I saw a lot of stuff on social media, Twitter, people, kind of comparing Ruggs to other situations, way less situations like the Aaron Rodgers stuff. I just didn't think it was appropriate. Ruggs, killed someone, going 156, drinking and driving, and he had his girlfriend in the passenger seat. So not only was he putting himself and everyone else at risk, he was also putting his girlfriend at risk at the time.
Yeah, honestly, just really disappointing when you consider the fact that it was either his best friend or just one of his best friends died in a car accident, and he still thought it was a good idea to go out and do that, and he ended up taking someone's life in the process. And that's something that, I'm not gonna say that maybe like he'll never become a better person or anything, but for now, all the criticism is definitely warranted. And he just, like you said, Spencer, I think he needs to sit in prison for a while and just think about what he's done. He also did have his girlfriend in the car, and he had a loaded weapon on the floor of the car, so he's probably going to get a second DUI charge and a weapons charge on top of everything, which is what's making the possible sentence stack up so much. But
And the NFL has like I saw that they have a service where you can get Uber. They pay for your Uber, NFL players, and it's completely like anonymous, so no one even knows like who put in Uber request or whatever. But yeah, that just makes it even more frustrating.
yeah, it's honestly just a really stupid decision. And when you consider everything that's happened with the Raiders just in the past few weeks, it's kind of crazy just the circus that's going on there. And I do actually feel really bad for Derek Carr.
Hmm.
As like the face of the franchise, he's kind of had to publicly handle the whole Gruden situation and now the Henry Ruggs situation. And I've always respected Derek Carr, but especially just after what's gone down this season, I respect Derek Carr even more. And I think he's just, regardless of how he plays on the field, whether he plays good or whether he plays bad, he's the type of person that the NFL needs more of and needs less of people like Henry Ruggs. So, yeah, hopefully it's just a learning experience for a lot of people in the NFL to know that just get an Uber or get a ride from one of your teammates. And unfortunately, instead of just getting in a crash into a ditch or something, he took another life, and that's something that he's going to have to live with. But moving on to a topic that's a little more hopeful, Chubba Purdy, younger brother of Brock Purdy, is transferring from Louisville. Spencer, should Iowa State attempt to get him here to at least compete for a starting spot and potentially take the reins from his brother? Or do you think it's something that should be left alone?
I think minimum you reach out and show interest. I don't think we were kind of discussing it earlier. Brock said that Chuba wants to create his own path, so I don't think Chuba would honestly be interested. But I think at minimum you reach out to him and show you're interested, because it's not like Hunter Deckers is no sure thing. With Brock likely gone after this year, and more competition in the quarterback room never hurts. You would have Deckers, Chuba, and then obviously Rocco coming in. So I think it certainly wouldn't hurt to reach out and just create more competition in the quarterback room.
Yeah, I agree with you, Spencer. I think a more talented quarterback room would, we'd obviously benefit from that. But we've also found, surfaced some tweets that we've heard that Brock has said has kind of shut down some of the rumors that he won't try and do that. But I wouldn't blame Chuba for just trying to put his name out there and kind of have a possibility for it. But I also have a lot of respect for Chuba if he decides to go somewhere else other than Iowa State. Because sometimes, if you look at it like how I am, it's you kind of take the easy route and kind of become a legacy. And I respect him for trying to kind of do his own thing.
Yeah, I agree that Iowa State should definitely reach out to Chubba Purdy, but like me personally, if I were him, I would want to go to a different school and forge my own path, just because, especially if he goes to Iowa State and it doesn't turn out, then he'll always be the younger brother of the guy who has like all the school records and is a school legend and didn't live up to the hype and did not play as well as his brother. So I think it's smarter for him for his own journey to go to a different school and compete for a starting job somewhere else. But I do agree with you, Spencer. I definitely think Iowa State needs to reach out and at least show they're interested. And, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, which I don't think it will, it doesn't. Moving on to the college football playoff rankings, which honestly have just been whack. AP poll has been pretty whack this year too, but then the college football playoff came out and it's like just even more whack somehow. But Logan, what are your overall thoughts on the rankings? Who do you think is too high or too low? And do you think the playoff is destroying college football?
So just right off the bat, I think Baylor seems a little too high to me, and then I think Cincinnati should be a little bit higher than they are right now. And I don't think the playoffs are destroying college football, but I think we need to open them up more, just because you would see teams like Oklahoma and Alabama against different playoff teams. Because when we get, it's kind of sad because when we get down to the Final Four, almost at the beginning of the year, we can predict after the first couple of weeks who's going to be in the Final Four, and it just would be a different experience to see more teams in there. And obviously, it would have been awesome last year because I think Iowa State would have been in there. But ultimately, I just think they need to open it up to more teams.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if they've officially agreed to it, but it is coming within like the next 3 years, expanding that to I think 8 teams or 12 teams. I don't know. But I don't think it's ruining college football by any means. I agree with Logan. They do need to expand it. And I think right now, obviously we're used to the college football playoff, but I still remember, back then with the BCS national championship, I find the playoff better than the contrary. I'd rather see multiple games to compete for a spot in the championship than just one championship game. Beyond that, with the rankings, I thought too low. I still think Oklahoma's too low. 9-0, ranked number 8. I know they've had some nail biters against some average teams, Kansas included. But they're a whole different team with Caleb Williams than Rattler. And I don't know if the committee is fully putting that in to consideration. And I'm looking right now, they've got 5 one-loss teams above them, and they still haven't lost. They've also got Cincy, who, I guess they beat Notre Dame, so I don't know. But I just don't know. Oregon's got a great win over Ohio State, but their loss is horrendous against Stanford. So I just don't know how teams like that are above Oklahoma. And then as far as who's too high, it gets tough in the teens. I get that, but I just don't know how BYU is the 14th best team in the country at 8-2. And they're above, Ole Miss 7-2, who's in the dogfight of the SEC. Even Iowa at 7-2 in the Big Ten, I would take over BYU. So those are my 2.
Yeah, so I agree that I think if the college football playoff keeps up at the pace it's on like right now and stays the same, I think it will be really bad for college football. But if they do open it up to at least 8 teams, it would be really, really fun. Because the problem with the college football playoff for the past 4-5 years, I would say, is that it hasn't really been fun. There's been games that have been interesting to watch, but I've never really been excited about a game because it just feels like I'm watching the same thing every year. There was LSU with Burrow, and there's been some other interesting things, but for the most part, I don't really like watching the same schools every year, and it seems like that's kind of what they just set it up to be. Even over the past couple weeks, the way they've ranked Alabama, it's like they're preparing for if Alabama loses to Georgia, they're still going to find a way to sneak Alabama into the top 4, and I don't really like that. And another thing I didn't really like was just I'm not saying that I don't agree with Michigan being ranked. Well, I agree that Michigan is a better team, but I also don't think they should be ranked over Michigan State, if that makes any sense. Gary Barta, when asked for the reasoning why Michigan is 6th and Michigan State is 7th when they have the same exact record, and Michigan State beat them head-to-head, he said Michigan State did beat Michigan, but Michigan is the better team. And that's kind of shows how I don't really like that whole eye test thing. And like Michigan State did lose to Purdue, but they're not the only team to fall victim to Purdue this year. And Michigan State did ball out against Michigan head-to-head. So I don't like that whole eye test business from the committee, because the eye test is always just a way to get the bigger brands into the top 4. And I think that's pretty shady. And just another thing, I don't think that Iowa State should be in the top 25. They don't deserve it right now. But Utah and Arkansas are 24th and 25th at 6-3. And Utah especially has three losses to teams that are outside the top 25 currently. They haven't beat a single team that's in the top 25. And I don't really understand what the case for them is. And then for Arkansas, I think they're 25th because they play in the SEC. That's honestly what I believe. So, yeah, it's just little things like that. I think a lot of things will solve themselves if they open up the playoffs a little bit more. But there are several things that really do annoy me from week to week when the rankings come out. And I hope that some of those things start to get solved because I think college football is worse off because of it. Sorry for rambling on for a while. It's a topic that I get kind of passionate about. So, anyways, Logan, I'm gonna let you go first on this topic because I know you got to defend your boy. Thoughts on the OBJ situation in Cleveland? And today it was announced that he signed with the Los Angeles Rams. So, thoughts on that as well.
So for the viewers out there, back over here is in fact a Baker Mayfield jersey. And I'm not here to defend Baker entirely. I'm actually here to play a little devil's advocate. So, we all know that for the past season, even with Odell out, Baker has been forcing the ball to Odell Beckham Jr. And now it just kind of seemed like, he was hurt at the beginning of the year. He comes back. Odell Beckham Sr. posts a little petty video of, oh, my son's not getting the ball even when he's wide open. And while sometimes that might be true, I think this is both for good sides. One, Odell Beckham Jr. is now on the Los Angeles Rams, one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NFC talent-wise. And now Cleveland, we saw how they were against Cincinnati. Now Cincinnati has gotten exposed a couple times, one of them against Aaron's Jets. But I still think they're a good team. But I think that this is more of Cleveland has an offense that is not prioritized to throwing the ball all the time to Odell. And, maybe sometimes he's not the first read. I think Baker kind of got into his mindset that he didn't want Odell to get mad because Odell can kind of be a cancer to your team sometimes when all he wants to do is just rack up the stats. But again, I digress. I think this is good for both Baker and I think it's good for both Odell. I wish Odell nothing but the best. And this is even coming from a Cleveland fan. This is coming from a Baker Mayfield fan. I truly do wish nothing but the best for Odell and see what happens with his future on the Rams.
I certainly agree with you. It's good for both sides. The Browns and Baker seem to play better when OBJ's not on the field for whatever reason. Just wasn't a good fit. And it allows the Browns to kind of more so stick to their strengths, which is running the ball with the duo they have at running back. But with that being said, OBJ, it'll be interesting to see what he does with the Rams. I don't see how he'll get much more targets than he got with the Browns. I mean, he was the clear number one, I think, in Cleveland, and in LA, he's maybe 2B, 2A, 2B. Cooper Kupp's obviously the best one there, and then Robert Woods. Him and Woods are neck and neck. OBJ is not what he used to be, though. I honestly don't expect too much of him, and I think people honestly place too much blame on Baker on the whole situation.
Yeah, I agree with things that both you guys said. I think that it's a good thing for both sides. OBJ gets to go to a really good team in the Rams, and Baker gets to have less pressure from a receiver who is very, very good when he has been very, very good in the past, but is pretty much a drama queen when it comes to off the field things. So, but the only thing with OBJ for me is that I think on the Rams, there's not really any spectrum for how good he's going to be. I think he's either going to be a great fit and ball out, or he's going to be an absolute cancer and cripple the Rams from the inside out, and they're going to regret their decision. But honestly, think best case scenario for Odell, I think would be like an Antonio Brown situation in Tampa Bay, where he doesn't get back to being like a 1,600 yard receiver, but he has his role and he does it well and he fits in among other great receivers and doesn't complain about how much he gets the ball. We'll see if he's able to do that. I don't know. I hope he can, because when OBJ is playing at the top of his game, he's a really enjoyable player, and I think he's good for the NFL. And I think Baker Mayfield is good for the NFL too. So I hope that they both just have success. Didn't work out with each other, but hopefully it works out without each other for both of them. A quick add-on question for both of you. Do either one of you think that Odell will ever get back to what he was in like the early Giants years, or do you think those years are past?
Spencer, I'll let you take this first.
Nah, I think those days are gone. Just too many injuries at this point. My buddy compared Odell today to kind of the Derrick Rose of the NFL, and I think that's really appropriate. Kind of people just kind of expecting him to get back to what he used to be. He's kind of more of a name at this point. I think he's probably still like a fringe 1,000 yard receiver when fully healthy, 16 games. But yeah, I don't think he's going to return to what he used to be.
Yeah, and you hate to see him kind of have like those 1 or 2 great years in New York and then come to Cleveland. And I will say, Baker is probably was not the best fit for him at that time. But I think, like what you're saying, Spencer, he might have 1,000 yards, next season, next couple seasons, but with injuries and everything like that, and just like what he brings to the game, I just don't know if he'll be able to return back to the level that he was in New York. And it's sad because, I don't want him to go down as the guy that made that really the best catch in NFL history.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's ever going to get back to that. Like both of you said, I think fringe 1,000 yards, not every season, but some seasons would be a good way to look at it for him. Even like 800, 900 yards would be very serviceable. And honestly, if he can just like, I hate to say it, but if he can just like shut up off the field and play good, doesn't have to be crazy, like he was on the Giants, but if he can have like 800 yards and like 6 or 7 touchdowns and kind of change the way that the media and just the entire NFL world thinks about him, I think that would be really, really good for his career. And getting a ring with the Rams this year, obviously, like winning cures all, and his legacy will look a lot different if he's able to get a ring too. But yeah, I think those years are long gone. Too many injuries and just too many personality clashes. I don't see him really getting back to that. It's kind of like Randy Moss for me. Randy Moss was amazing on the Vikings, was not good on the Raiders, was really good on the Patriots, and obviously that was because he played with Tom Brady. But after that, really didn't do anything. And I think that's kind of where OBJ is at now, where he's like very legendary for what he did at certain points in his career and is still a huge name, but those glory days are kind of behind him. But moving on to our final topic, Logan, you can go. Well, I guess either one of you can go first because you kind of switched off on the OBJ situation. But were you surprised by Buster Posey, the San Francisco Giants catcher's retirement announcement? And I think this is a really stupid question, but it's actually a debate. So is he a Hall of Famer?
I first of all, I don't think I wasn't too shocked to see him retire. It feels like he's been a seasoned vet, for years now. And I think it was cool to see him go out the way he did with the season he had and with how good the Giants were. I just think it was appropriate. Would have been even cooler, honestly, if the Giants were able to win the World Series. But with your second question, I think no doubt he's a Hall of Famer. I know people like to debate, Yadi Molina being a Hall of Famer. I think Posey, the best catcher of our generation, over Molina and over Joe Mauer.
Yeah, and I don't know too much about Buster Posey, but just like looking at his stats and everything that I talked to my roommates that do know a lot about baseball. And I'll express my opinion here too. I think he really came back this year. He kind of showed what he was after a couple off years. And I think I'm not very too surprised about that. He is getting kind of up there in age, and it kind of just seems like the swan song year where he has a great year. And like you said, Spencer, it would have been great to see him win a pennant with the Giants. But to the second question, I do think he is a Hall of Famer. One stat that one of my roommates brought up to me is, I forget the correct term, but he has about anywhere from 20 to 30. It's like dead balls, whatever it is, ball that gets past the catcher in over 1,000 games played. So that's very, very impressive. And it's not something very many catchers do. So I definitely think he's a Hall of Famer at the end of the day.
Yeah, so like I said, I think it's a stupid question. Every time someone retires now, people just have to have the debate of whether they're a Hall of Famer. And I think Buster Posey is an obvious Hall of Famer. 3 World Series, won an MVP. Catcher is not a position that you expect a lot of offense from. And when you do get a lot of even average offense from a catcher, any team will take that. And Buster Posey was a well above average offensive catcher for over a decade. And I think that gets him into the Hall of Fame. I agree with you, Spencer. He's the best catcher of our generation. And just going back to the first part of the question, if I was surprised, I actually was a little bit surprised. I thought he would, if he played this upcoming year, would be his last year. But just considering how well he played this past year, kind of like a really nice comeback season for him, I was curious if he was going to try to run it back one more time with the Giants and see if they could get through at least to one, not necessarily win the World Series, but get to another one. But I think it was a good ending point in his career, and I think he's an obvious Hall of Famer, and I don't really understand that debate. But yeah, that's all we've got for today on Cyclone InCyders. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back at it next week.